Our next presentation is by Yanina Diaz. Translocation type matters, predicting transferable embryos in PGTSR.
Hello everyone, thanks for this introduction. This is my disclosure. I would like to begin by highlighting that balanced translocations are relatively common in the general population, with an incidence of 1 in 750 for reciprocal translocation and 1 in 1,000 for Robertsonian translocations. But among the infertile population, these frequencies increases tenfold because carriers of balanced translocation are more likely to generate unbalanced gametes, often resulting in infertility. In these cases, preimplantation genetic testing for structural rearrangement, or PGTSR, is a key tool to identify and select the embryos that are normal or balanced, improving reproductive outcomes in these patients. However, there are different factors that might affect the availability of transferable embryos, such as the translocation type, either reciprocal translocation or Robertsonian translocations, the gender of carriers, either male or female carriers, the maternal age, because as we know, the probability of aneuploidies increases with maternal age, the interchromosomal effect, which suggests that translocated chromosome might disrupt spindle alignment during meiosis, leading to improper segregation of other chromosomes. Finally, the chromosomal type in reciprocal translocations. That means the presence or absence of acrocentric chromosomes in reciprocal translocations. Because some studies suggest that reciprocal translocation involved with acrocentric chromosomes result in a higher proportion of unbalanced gametes compared to those without acrocentric chromosomes. Therefore, despite their potential importance, these factors have been poorly studied. Therefore, this study aims to explore if these factors affect the availability of transferable embryos. This is a retrospective and multi-center study that includes 4 IVF centers from Argentina. This study evaluated 269 embryos analyzed by PGTSR, and embryos were classified as transferable and non-transferable embryos. Transferable and non-transferable embryos were compared according to the translocation type, the gender of carriers, and the maternal age. To evaluate the presence of an interchromosomal effect, non-transferable embryos were divided into 3 groups. Unbalanced embryos, those with pure interchromosomal effect, that means balanced embryos for the translocation with aneuploidies in another chromosomes, and those with combined interchromosomal effect, that means unbalanced embryos for the translocation with aneuploidies in another chromosomes. Finally, to evaluate the impact of chromosomal type, only reciprocal translocation were considered, and data were divided into 2 subgroups: reciprocal translocation with acrocentric chromosomes and without acrocentric chromosomes. When the couples were divided according to the translocation type, Robertsonian translocation show a higher proportion of transferable embryos, compared to reciprocal translocation, and this difference was statistically significant. To assess if this difference was due to maternal age, we divided data into 2 subgroups: 37 or younger and older than 37. And the Robertsonian translocation showed a higher proportion of transferable embryos in both age groups. Then we analyze data according to the gender of carriers. And male carriers show a higher proportion of transferable embryos compared to female carriers, and this difference was statistically significant. But when we analyze data by maternal age, we didn't find significant difference between male and female carriers in any age groups. However, we observed in the both groups the same trend, a higher proportion of transferable embryos when the carrier was the father. Then we performed a logistic regression to evaluate the effect of these factors and to identify which had the most impact. This analysis indicated that only the translocation type had a significant impact in the acquisition of transferable embryos. Then, to evaluate the presence of an interchromosomal effect, non-transferable embryos were divided into 3 groups. When we compare these groups according to translocation type, reciprocal translocation group show a higher proportion of unbalanced gametes, of unbalanced embryos, while Robertsonian translocation group had more pure interchromosomal effect. Then we compare this by gender of carriers, and we didn't find significant differences between any groups. However, we observed the same trend. Finally, to evaluate the impact of chromosomal type, reciprocal translocation were divided into 2 groups. When we compare these groups, we observed that reciprocal translocation without we didn't find significant difference, but we observed that reciprocal translocation without acrocentric chromosomes show a higher proportion of transferable embryos despite having a higher maternal age. Then the limitations were the retrospective nature of the study and the small sample size. And in conclusion, our results suggest that translocation type played the main role of obtaining transferable embryos, while the other factors act as modulators. In PGTSR, Robertsonian translocation carriers have a higher probability of obtaining transferable embryos. Pure interchromosomal effect made the main cause of obtaining transferable embryos in Robertsonian translocation, while reciprocal translocation, it may be related to the production of unbalanced embryos. Finally, reciprocal translocation involved with acrocentric chromosomes may be associated with a lower proportion of transferable embryos. To summarize, these findings are important for reproductive counseling and prognosis in carriers of chromosomal translocations. I would like to thank the center's participant centers and my team. Thanks.
And this paper is open for questions.
Sorry. Thank you so much. This is really important and good to see that you're doing PGTSR and trying to figure out how to probably better counsel patients. Have you noticed any differences in ability to predict transferable embryos based on the size of the translocated segments?
Again, please.
Have you taken into consideration the size of the transposed segments?
Okay. You say in segmental?
Yes.
Segmental size. Yes. We didn't we didn't evaluate the segmental size, and we divided data according to the as transferable if they were euploid, mosaics, lower mosaics, and balanced, and no transferable embryos if they were aneuploid, low mosaics, and aneuploid. But we didn't evaluate if the.
And what is the resolution of detection? So what is the lowest size that you can detect in the segmental?
Again, please.
What is the resolution for the PGTS?
Okay, 10. Maybe. Thanks.
I was actually going to try to answer her question. We did a study. I'm Lauren Walterson. I used to be with Invitae before we closed down our PGT program. Sad. But we published on this last year, and we tried to look at the proportion of the chromosome that was affected by the translocation, and unfortunately the data size was just too small. We had over 2,700 biopsies, and there's just not enough resolution. So if the field could come together as a whole and put this all into a giant data set, maybe we could try to get answers for these patients.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to our last